Hello, this is Robert Fulghum. What you are about to hear was composed over many years, a little bit at a time, and addressed to friends, family, a religious community, and myself, with no thought of publication, really. I don't know what to call it, but I think of it as my stuff, a report about what goes on in my head and life. I did change some names and facts to protect those who are either innocent or crabby or both. There are contradictions in here, and you may be listening along and think, didn't he just say the opposite of that a few minutes back? Yes, it's because I seem to hold in my head some mutually exclusive notions. For example, it is true that the unexamined life is not worth living, and it is true that ignorance is bliss, and so on. It's just that I haven't made up my mind about everything yet. Each spring for many years, I have set myself the task of considering a personal statement of belief, a credo, Latin for I believe. When I was younger, it sounded like a Supreme Court brief, as if words could resolve all conflicts about the meaning of existence. The credo has grown shorter in recent years, sometimes cynical, sometimes comical, sometimes bland, but I keep working at it. Recently, I set out to get the statement of personal belief down to one page in simple terms, fully understanding the naive idealism that implied. The inspiration for brevity came to me at a gasoline station, for I had managed to fill an old car's tank with super deluxe high octane go juice, and my old hoopy just couldn't handle it, and it got the willies. It kept sputtering out at intersections and belching going downhill. I understood, for my mind and my spirit get like that from time to time. Too much high content information, and I get the existential willies, keep sputtering out at intersections where life choices must be made, and I either know too much or not enough. The examined life is no picnic. I realized then that I already know most of what's necessary to live a meaningful life, that it isn't all that complicated. I know it, and I have known it for a long, long time. Living it, well, that's another matter. My credo sounds like this. Most of what I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sand pile at Sunday school. And these are the things I learned there. Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush the toilet after you use it. I learned that warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. I learned to live a balanced life, to learn some and think some and draw some and paint and dance and play and work some every day, and then to take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. I learned to be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup? The roots go down, the plant goes up, and nobody really knows how or why, but we are all like that. Goldfish and hamsters and white mice and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup, they all die. And so do we. And then I remember the book Dick and Jane, and the first word I learned, the biggest word of all, look. Everything you need to know is in there somewhere. The golden rule, and love, and basic sanitation, ecology and politics and equality and sane living. You could take any one of those items and extrapolate it into sophisticated adult terms and apply them to your family life or your work or your government or your world, and they hold true and clear and firm. For example, think what a better world it would be if we all, the whole world, had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon and then lay down with our blankies for a nap. Or if all governments had as a basic policy to always put things back where they found them and to clean up their own mess. And it is still true, no matter how old you are, when you go out into the world, it is best to hold hands and stick together. In the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, some villagers practice a unique form of logging. If a tree is too large to be felled with an axe, the natives cut it down by yelling at it. I can't lay my hands on the article, but I swear I read it in a book somewhere. You see woodsmen with special powers creep up on a tree just at dawn and suddenly scream at it at the top of their lungs. They continue this for 30 days, and the tree dies and falls over. The theory is that the hollering kills the spirit of the tree. According to the villagers, it always works. Ah, those poor native innocents, such quaintly charming habits of the jungle, screaming at trees, indeed. How primitive. Too bad they don't have the advantages of modern technology and the scientific mind. Me? Well, I yell at my wife, and yell at the telephone, and the lawnmower, and yell at the TV and the newspaper and my children. I've been known to shake my fist and yell at the sky at times. And the man next door, he yells at his car a lot. This summer I heard him yell at a stepladder for most of an afternoon. Modern, urban, educated folks yell at traffic and umpires and bills and banks and machines, especially machines. Machines and relatives get most of the yelling, I suppose. I don't know what good it does. The machines and the things, they just sit there. Even kicking doesn't always help. As for people, well, the Solomon Islanders may have a point. Yelling at living things does tend to kill the spirit in them. Sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will break our hearts. Good friends finally put their resources together and made themselves a child. Me, I'm the godfather in the deal, and I take my job seriously. So far, I've introduced the kid to the good things in life: chocolate, beer, cigars, Beethoven, dirty jokes. I don't think he cares much for Beethoven, and he's only a year and a half old, and he'll get tired of chocolate, beer, cigars, and dirty jokes. I haven't told him about sex yet, but he's got some ideas of his own already. I won't go into the details here, but if you've ever had a little kid or ever been a little kid, then you know what I mean. And also, I introduced him to Crayolas. I bought the beginner set, the short, fat, thick ones with training wheels. Every few weeks, I would put one in his hand and show him how to make a mark with it. Mostly, he just held it and stared at me. He had a cigar in his other hand and couldn't tell the difference between it and the Crayola. And then we went through the orifice stuffing phase, where the Crayola went into his mouth and ears and nose. But finally, last week, I held his hand and made a big red mark with the Crayola on a sheet of newsprint, and wham! He got the picture. A light bulb went off in a new room in his head, and he did it again on his own. Now, reports his mother, with a mixture of pleasure and pain, there is no stopping him. Crayolas plus imagination, the ability to create images. These make for happiness if you are a child. Amazing things, Crayolas. Some petroleum-based wax, some dye, a little binder. Not much to them, really, until you add the imagination. The Binding Company in Pennsylvania makes about 2 billion of these oleaginous sticks of pleasure every year and exports them to every country in the United Nations. Crayolas are one of the few things the human race has in common, and that green and yellow box hasn't changed since 1937. In fact, the only change has been to rename the flesh color peach. That's a sign of progress. The way I know about flesh and peach is that when I bought my godson his trainer set, I indulged myself and bought my very own set of 64. In the big 4-section box with the sharpener built right in. I never had my own set of 64 before. Seemed like I was always too young or too old to have one. And while I was at it, I bought several other sets. I got one for the kid's mother and father and explained it was theirs, not his. But what I noticed is that every adult or child I gave a new set of Crayolas to goes a little funny. The kids smile, get a glazed look on their faces, pour the crayons out and just look at them for a while, and then they go to work on the nearest flat surface and will draw anything you ask, just name it. And the adults, they get a kind of sheepish smile on their faces, a mixture of delight, nostalgia, and silliness. And they immediately start telling you all about their experiences with Crayolas. Their first box, using every color, breaking them, trying to get them in the box in order again, trying to use them in a bundle, putting them on hot things to see them melt, shaving them onto waxed paper and ironing them into stained glass windows, eating them, and on and on. If you want an interesting party sometime, combine cocktails and a fresh box of Crayolas for everybody. When you think about it, for sheer bulk, there's more art done with Crayolas than with anything else. There must be billions of sheets of paper in every country in the world, in billions of boxes and closets and attics and cupboards covered with billions of pictures in crayon. The imagination of the human race poured out like a river. Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev used crayons, I bet. And so did Fidel and the Emperor of Japan and Rajiv Gandhi and Mrs. Thatcher and Mr. Mubarak and maybe even the Ayatollah and just about everybody else you would care to name. Maybe we should develop a Crayola bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb, and every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. It would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to earth, boxes of Crayolas. And we wouldn't go cheap either, not little boxes of 8, boxes of 64 with the sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper and magenta and peach and lime, amber and umber and all the rest. And people would smile and get a little funny look on their faces and begin to cover the world with imagination. I guess that sounds absurd, doesn't it? A little dumb, crazy, silly, weird. But I was reading in the paper today how much money the Russians and our Congress have just set aside for weapons. And I think about what those weapons will do, and I'm not confused about what's weird and silly and crazy and absurd. And I'm also not confused about the lack of or the need for imagination in low or high places. Pass the crayons, please. The winding down of summer puts me in a heavy philosophical mood. I am thinking about the deep, very private, personal needs of people. Needs that, when met, give us a great sense of well-being. We don't like to talk about these for fear that people will not understand, but to increase our level of intimacy, I will tell you about one of mine: chicken fried steak. If you have any idea of what's good, you already know you take a piece of stringy beef, pound hell out of it with a kitchen sledge, dip it in egg and flour, drop it in a skillet with bacon drippings, and fry it up. Then you take it out, throw in some flour and milk and salt and pepper, and you got serious gravy. On the plate with the steak, you lay peas and mashed potatoes, and then you dump on the gravy some cornbread and butter and a quart of cold milk on the side. Then you take knife and fork in hand, hunker down close to the trough, lift your eyes heavenward in praise of the wonders of the Lord, and don't stop until you've mopped up the last trace of gravy with the very last piece of cornbread. Disgusting, you say. Sure, but you probably eat something that stands for home and happiness that I wouldn't approach with a Geiger counter and a bomb squad. And it's okay. You eat yours, I'll eat mine. We could do worse. Now, everybody has some secret goals in life, and I've kind of been keeping my eye out for the ultimate chicken fried steak experience. You have to look in truck stops and little country towns off the freeway, little temples of the holy meal out there in the underbrush. If you're interested, this summer's search produced these results. here's my ratings. 1 star to the Torres Bar and Grill in Weezer, Idaho. Free toothpicks, too. 2 stars to the Farewell Bend Cafe in Farewell Bend, Oregon, with special praise for a side of graveyard stew, which is milk toast and another story. 2 stars to the Blue Bucket in Umatilla, Oregon, with free mints afterwards. 3 stars to the Rooster Tail Truck Stop on 6th Avenue South in Seattle. The waitress used to drive a truck in Alabama, and she knows all about chicken fried steak. But 5 stars and a bouquet to Maud Owens Cafe in Payette, Idaho, where the chicken fried steak hangs over the edge of the plate and is accompanied by parsley, a spice peach, 2 dill pickles, and a fried egg, and free toothpicks, and free mints, and a map of Payette under the plate. The manager shook my hand when I left Maud Owens Cafe. The waitress gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I left her a $2 tip. I don't think anybody had ever eaten the whole thing before, and they were impressed. And I was impressed because I could still taste it 3 days later. Now, I suppose you are wondering why on earth I am telling you all this. Well, I get tired of hearing that it's a crummy world and that people are no damned good. What kind of talk is that? I know a place in Payette, Idaho, where a cook and a waitress and a manager put everything they've got into laying a chicken fried steak on you. The Rolling Stones are famous for their phrase about how you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you can get what you need. Well, I'm here to tell you that sometimes you can get what you want and what you need at the same time, with free toothpicks and mints and a kiss for topping. In the early dry dark of an October Saturday evening, the neighborhood children are playing hide and seek. How long since I played hide and seek? 30 years, maybe more? I remember how. I could become part of the game in a moment if invited, but adults don't play hide and seek, at least not for fun anyway. Too bad. Did you ever have a kid in your neighborhood who always hid so good nobody could find him? We did. After a while we would give up on him and go off, leaving him to rot wherever he was, and sooner or later he would show up all mad because we didn't keep looking for him, and we would get mad back because he wasn't playing the game the way it was supposed to be played. There's hiding and there's finding, we'd say, and he'd say it was hide and seek, not hide and give up, and we'd all yell about who made the rules and who cared about who anyway, and how we wouldn't play with him anymore if he didn't get it straight, and who needed him anyhow, and things like that. Hide and seek and yell. No matter what, though, the next time he would hide too good again. And he's probably still hidden somewhere for all I know. As I write this, the neighborhood game goes on, and there is a kid under a pile of leaves in the yard just under my window. And he has been there for a long time now, and everybody else is found, and they are about to give up on him over at the base. I considered going out to the base and telling them where he's hiding, and then I thought about setting the leaves on fire to drive him out, and finally I just yelled, "Get found, kid!" out the window, and scared him so bad he probably wet his pants and started crying and ran home to tell his mother. It's really hard to know how to be helpful sometimes. A man I know found out last year he had terminal cancer. He was a doctor, and he knew about dying, and he didn't want to make his family and friends suffer through that with him, so he kept his secret. And he died. And everybody said how brave he was to bear his suffering in silence and not tell everybody and so on and so forth. But privately, his family and friends said how angry they were that he didn't need them. He didn't trust their strength. And it hurt that he didn't say goodbye. He hid too well. Getting found would have kept him in the game. This is hide and seek grown-up style. Wanting to hide, needing to be sought, confused about being found. I don't want anyone to know. What will people think? I don't want to bother anyone. Better than hide and seek, I like the game called sardines. In sardines, the person who is it goes and hides and everybody else goes looking for him, And when you find him, you get in and hide there with him. And then pretty soon everybody is hiding together, all stacked in a small space like puppies in a pile. And pretty soon somebody giggles and somebody laughs and everybody gets found. Medieval theologians even described God in hide-and-seek terms, calling him Deus absconditus. But me, I think of old God as a sardine player. And will be found the same way everybody gets found in sardines, by the sound of laughter of those heaped together at the end. Ollie, Ollie, oxen free. The kids out in the street are hollering the cry that says, come on in, wherever you are, it's a new game. And so say I, to all those who have hid too well, get found, kid. Ollie, Ollie, oxen free. How about some good news for a change? Something to consider when you are in a people are no damn good mood. Here's a phrase we hear a lot. You can't trust anybody anymore. Doctors and politicians and merchants and salesmen, they're all out to rip you off, right? Well, it ain't necessarily so. A man named Stephen Brill tested the theory in New York with taxicab drivers. Brill posed as a well-to-do foreigner with little knowledge of English, and he got into several dozen taxis around New York to see how many drivers would cheat him. His friends predicted in advance that most would take advantage of him in some way. Well, one driver out of 37 actually cheated him, and the rest took him directly to his destination and charged him correctly. Several refused to take him when his destination was only a block or two away, even getting out of their cabs to show him how close he already was. And the greatest irony of all was that several drivers warned him that New York was full of crooks and to be careful. You will continue to read stories of crookedness and corruption, of policemen who lie and steal, doctors who reap where they do not sow, and politicians on the take. But don't be misled. They are news because they are the exceptions. The evidence suggests that you can trust a lot more people than you think. And the evidence suggests that a lot of people believe that. A recent survey by Gallup indicates that 70% of the people believe that most people can be trusted most of the time. Who says people are no damn good? What kind of talk is that? The man next door cleaned his gutters yesterday. Downspouts, too. And he's done it before. I saw him last year. Amazing. I was 40 years old before I even knew that people cleaned gutters and downspouts, and I haven't been able to get around to doing it once yet. I live in awe of people who get those jobs done, the people who live orderly lives, the ones who always do what needs to be done and do it right. I know of people who actually balance their checkbooks each month. I know that's hardly credible, but I swear it's so. And these people also have filing cabinets, not shoe boxes, filing cabinets with neat, up-to-date, relevant files. And they can find things around the house when they need them. And there is order under their sinks, in their closets, and in the trunks of their cars. They actually change the filter on their furnace once a year, and they put oil and grease on mechanical things, and their warranties runneth not out. And not only do their flashlights work, they actually know where the flashlights are. When their car was last serviced, they know that too. The tools in their garage are on the pegboard, right where they're supposed to be. Their taxes are based on facts, not hunches and prayer, and when they go to sleep at night, their list of things to do has a line through every item. And when they arise in the morning, their bathrobe is right there beside the bed, and it is clean and new. Socks right there in the drawer, folded into matching pairs. Yes, and as they prepare to walk out the door into a new day, they know exactly where their car keys and are not worried about the state of the car battery or if there is enough gas to get to work. Yes, there are such people, ones who have it all together. exempt from the reign of chaos and the laws of entropy. I see them every day all around me, calm and easy pillars of society. They are the people in your high school yearbook you wanted to be, the ones who made it. Well, I'm not one of them. Out of the frying pan into the spilt milk is more me. Most of the time, daily life is a lot like an endless chore of chasing chickens in a large pen. Life is an air raid drill, never mind the details. But I have a recurring fantasy that sees me through. It is my stick polishing fantasy. One day a committee of elders will come to my door and tell me it is time to perform the ritual of the polished stick, a rite of passage for the good at heart but chronically disorganized. Here's the way it works. You get selected for this deal because you are such a good person at heart, and it is time you were let off the hook. First, a week of your life is given to you, free of all obligations, and your calendar is wiped clean. No committee meetings, no overdue anything, bills, correspondence, or unanswered telephone calls. You are taken to a nice place where it is all quiet and serene and zen. You are cared for, fed well, and often affirmed. And your task is simply this: to spend a week polishing a stick. They give you some sandpaper and lemon oil and rags, and of course the stick, a nice but ordinary piece of wood, and all you have to do is polish it as well as you can, whenever you feel like it. That's it. Polish the stick. And at the end of the week, the elders will return, and they will gravely examine your work. They will praise you for your expertise, your sensitivity, and your spiritual insight. No stick was ever polished quite like this, they will exclaim. Your picture will appear on TV and in the papers, and the story will say, "Man who is good at heart and well intentioned has thoroughly and completely and admirably polished his stick." You will be escorted home in quiet triumph. Your family and neighbors will give you looks of respect, and as you pass in the streets, people will smile knowingly and wave and give you the thumbs up sign. You will have passed into another stage of being. But more than that, from this time forward, you may ignore your gutters and downspouts, your checkbooks and files and forms and closets and drawers and taxes, and even the trunk of your car will be taken care of for you. For you are now exempt from those concerns. You are forever released from the bond of things to do. For you have polished the stick. Look at it hanging there over your mantel. Be proud, stick polisher. This is really something, and it is enough. Oh, don't I wish? Hair grows at the rate of about half an inch a month. I don't know where he got his facts, but my friend Mr. Washington came up with that one when we were comparing barbers. That means that about 8 feet of hair had been cut off my head and face in the last 16 years by my barber. And I hadn't thought much about it until I called to make my usual appointment and found that my barber had left to go into building maintenance. What? How could he do this? My barber! It felt like a death in the family. There was so much more to our relationship than sartorial statistics. We started out as categories to each other: barber, customer, and then we became redneck ignorant barber and pinko egghead minister, and once a month we reviewed the world and our lives and explored our positions. We sparred over civil rights, Vietnam, and a lot of elections. We became mirrors, confidants, confessors, therapists, and companions in an odd sort of way. We went through being 30 years old, and then 40 years old. We discussed and argued and joked, but always with a certain thoughtful deference. After all, I was his customer, and after all, he was standing there with a razor in his hand. I found out that his dad was a country policeman, and that he grew up poor in a tiny town and had prejudices about Indians. And he found out that I had the same small town roots and grew up with prejudices about blacks. Our kids were the same ages, and we suffered through the same stages of parenthood together. We shared wife stories and children's stories and car troubles and lawn problems. I found out he gave his day off to giving free haircuts to old men in nursing homes, and he found out a few good things about me too, I suppose. I never saw him outside the barber shop, never met his wife or children, never sat in his home or ate a meal with him, and yet he became a terribly important fixture in my life, perhaps a lot more important than if we had been next-door neighbors. The quality of our relationship was partly created by a peculiar distance, and now there's a real sense of loss in his leaving. I feel like not having my hair cut anymore, though 8 feet of hair might seem strange in time. Without realizing it, we fill important places in each other's lives. It's that way with a minister in congregation, or with the guy at the corner grocery, the mechanic at the local garage, the family doctor, teachers, neighbors, coworkers, good people who are always there, who can be relied upon in small, important ways. People who teach us, bless us, encourage us, support us, uplift us in the dailiness of life. And we never tell them. I don't know why, but we don't. And of course, we will fill that role ourselves, for there are those who depend on us, watch us, learn from us, take from us, and we never know. So don't sell yourself short. You may never have proof of your importance, but you are more important than you think. This reminds me of an old story of a good man who was granted one wish by God. The man said he would like to go about doing good without knowing about it. And so God granted his wish. And then God decided that that was such a good idea, he would grant the same wish to all human beings. And so it has been to this very day. Giants, Wizards, and Dwarfs was the game to play. Being left in charge of about 80 children 7 to 10 years old while their parents were off doing parenty things, I mustered my troops in the church social hall and explained the game. It's a kind of large-scale version of rock, paper, and scissors, and involves some intellectual decision-making, but the real purpose of the game is to make a lot of noise and run around chasing people until nobody knows which side you are on or who won. Organizing a room full of wired-up grade schoolers into 2 teams, explaining the rudiments of the game, achieving consensus on group identity, all this is no mean accomplishment, but somehow we did it with a right goodwill and were ready to go. The excitement of the chase had reached a critical mass. I yelled out, "You have to decide now which you are, a giant, a wizard, or a dwarf!" And while the groups huddled in frenzied, whispered consultation, a tug came at my pants leg. A small child stood there looking up and asked in a small, concerned voice, "Where do the mermaids stand?" "Where do the mermaids stand?" A long pause, a very long pause. "Where do the mermaids stand?" says I. "Yes, you see, I am a mermaid." "There are no such things as mermaids." "Oh, yes, I am one." She did not relate to being a giant, a wizard, or a dwarf. She knew her category, mermaid, and was not about to leave the game and go over and stand against the wall where a loser would stand. She intended to participate, wherever mermaids fit into the scheme of things, without giving up dignity or identity. She took it for granted that there was a place for mermaids, and that I would know just where. Well, where do the mermaids stand? All the mermaids, all those who are different, who do not fit the norm and who do not accept the available boxes and pigeonholes. Answer that question and you can build a school, a nation, or a world on it. And what was my answer at the moment? Well, every once in a while I say the right thing. The mermaid stands right here by the king of the sea, says I. Yes, right here by the king's fool, I thought to myself. And so we stood there, hand in hand, reviewing the troops of wizards and giants and dwarfs as they rolled by in wild disarray. It is not true, by the way, that mermaids do not exist, for I know at least one personally. I have held her hand. The rap on the door was sharp, urgent, insistent, a foreboding of crisis. Rappity, 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 rap! Me rushing to the door, fumbling with the lock, pumping my adrenaline, preparing for an emergency. A small boy, odd expression, hands me a scrawled note on a much folded paper. My name is Donnie. I will rake your leaves. $1 a yard. I am deaf. You can write to me. I can read. I rake good. Across the back of our house is a row of middle-aged, matronly maple trees, extravagantly dressed in season in a million-leaf sequins. And in season, the sequins detach. Not much wind in our sheltered yard, so the leaves lie about the ladies' feet now like dressing gowns they've stepped out of in preparation for the bath of winter. I like the way it looks. I like the way it looks very much. My wife does not. The gardening magazine does not like it either. Leaves should be raked. There are rules. Leaves are not good for grass. Leaves are untidy. Leaves are moldy, slimy. But I like leaves so much I once filled up my classroom at school ankle deep with them. There is a reason for leaves. There is no reason for mowed grass, so say I. My wife does not see it this way. There is an unspoken accusation in the air of laziness, and we have been through this before, but this year a bargain has been struck in the name of the scientific method. Half the yard will be properly raked, and the other half will be left in the care of nature. Come summer, we shall see. And so her part is raked, and mine is not. Let it be. Like a pilot in a fog relying on limited instruments, the boy looks intently at my face for information. He knows I have leaves, for he has seen them, and mine is the only yard in the neighborhood with leaves, in fact. He knows his price is right, and so solemnly he holds out pencil and paper for my reply. How can I explain to him the importance of the scientific experiment going on in my backyard? In a way, the trees are there because of the leaves. With unbridled extravagance, zillions of seeds have helicoptered down to land like assault forces to green the earth. The leaves follow to cover, protect, warm, and nourish the next generation of trees. Stony ground, rot, mold, bacteria, birds, squirrels, bugs, and people all intervene, but somehow, some make it. Some tenacious seeds take hold and hold on for dear life, and in the silence of winter's dark, they prevail and plant themselves and survive to become the next generation of trees. It has been thus for eons, and we mess with the process at our peril, say I. This is important stuff. My name is Donnie. I will rake your leaves. $1 a yard. I am deaf. You can write to me. I can read. I rake good. And he holds out the pencil and paper with patience and hope and goodwill. There are times when the simplest of events call all of one's existential motives into question. What would I do if he wasn't deaf? What will it do for him if I say no? If I say yes, what difference? We stand in each other's long silence, inarticulate for different reasons. In the same motion that he turns to go, I reach for the pencil and paper to write, solemnly, "Yes, yes, I would like to have my leaves raked." A grave nod from the attentive businessman child. "Do you do it when they are wet?" I ask. "Yes," he writes. "Do you have your own rake?" "No." "This is a big yard. There are lots of leaves." "Yes." "I think I should give you $2. A smile. "3," he writes. A grin. And we have a contract. The rake is produced, and Donnie the deaf leaf raker goes to work in the fast falling November twilight. In silence he rakes. In silence I watch through the window of the dark house. Are there any sounds at all in his mind, I wonder? Or only the hollow, empty sea sound I get when I put my fingers in my ears as tightly as I can? Carefully he rakes the leaves into a large pile as instructed. Yes, I am thinking I will spread them out over the yard again after he's gone. I am stubborn about this. And carefully he goes back over the yard, picking up missed leaves by hand and carrying them to the pile. He is also stubborn about his values. Raking leaves means all the leaves. Signing that he must go because it is dark and he must go home to eat, he leaves the work unfinished. Having paid in advance, I wonder if he will return. At age 45, I am cynical, too cynical. Come morning, he has returned to his task, first checking the previously raked yard for latecomers, for he takes pride in his work. The yard is leaf-free. I note his picking up several of the brightest yellow leaves and putting them into the pocket of his sweatshirt, along with a whole handful of helicoptered seeds. Rappity, 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 rap. He reports to the door, signing that the work is done. As he goes off up the street, I see him tossing one helicopter seed into the air at a time as he walks away. Fringe benefits. And I stand in my own door, in my own silence, smiling at his grace. Fringe benefits. Tomorrow I will go out and push the pile of leaves over the bank into the compost heap at the bottom of the ravine behind our house. I will do it in silence. The leaves and seeds will have to work out their destiny at the bottom of the ravine this year. I could not feel right about undoing his work. My experiment with science will have to stand aside for something more human. The leaves let go, the seeds let go, and I must let go sometimes too, and cast my lot with another of nature's disfigured but tenacious survivors. Hold on, Donnie. Hold on. The big deal of my summer was a week in Weezer, Idaho. Maybe that's hard to believe, because if you've ever looked at an Idaho map, you know Weezer is nowhere. But if you play the fiddle, Weezer, Idaho is the center of the universe. The Grand National Old Time Fiddlers Contest is there the last week in June every year, and since I've fiddled around some in my time, I went. 4,000 people live there in normal times, but 5,000 more come out of the bushes and trees and hills for the contest. The town stays open around the clock, with fiddling in the streets, dancing in the VFW hall, fried chicken in the Elks Lodge, and free camping at the rodeo grounds. And people from all over show up. Fiddlers from Pottsboro, Texas, Sapulpa, Oklahoma, Thief River Falls, Minnesota, Caldwell, Kansas, Three Forks, Montana, and just about every other little dingbat town you care to mention, and even Japan. It used to be that the festival was populated by country folks, pretty straight types, short hair, church on Sunday, women in their place, and all that. And then the long-haired hippie freaks began to show up, and the trouble with that was that the freaks could fiddle to beat hell. So the town turned over the junior high school and its grounds to the freaks, and the contest judges were put in an isolated room where they could only hear the music, so they couldn't see what people looked like or what their names were, just hear the fiddling. As one old gentleman put it, "Son, I don't care if you're stark naked and wear a bone in your nose. If you can fiddle, you're all right with me. It's the music we make that counts." So I was standing there in the middle of the night in the moonlight in Weezer, Idaho, with about 1,000 other people who were picking and singing and fiddling together. Some had bald heads, some with hair to their knees, some with a joint, some with a long-necked bottle of beer, some with beads, some with Archie Bunker t-shirts, some 18 years old and some 80, some with corsets and some with no bras, and the music rising like incense into the night toward whatever gods of peace and goodwill there may be. I was standing there, and this policeman, a real honest-to-God Weezer, Idaho policeman, who is standing next to me and picking a banjo, really, I swear it, says to me, "Sometimes the world seems like a mighty fine place, don't it?" Oh, yes, and yet again, yes, yes, indeed. Pick it, brother, let the music roll on. A troubled man paid a visit to his rabbi. A wise and good old rabbi, as all rabbis try to be. "Rabbi," said he, wringing his hands, "I am a failure. More than half the time I do not succeed in doing what I must do." "Oh?" said the rabbi. "Please say something wise, Rabbi," said the man. After much pondering, the rabbi spoke as follows. "Ah, my son, I give you this wisdom. Go and look on page 930 of the New York Times Almanac for the year 1970, and you will find peace of mind, maybe." "Ah," said the man, and he went away and did that thing. Now this is what he found. The listing of the lifetime batting averages of all the greatest baseball players. Ty Cobb, the greatest slugger of them all, had a lifetime average of only .367. Even Babe Ruth didn't do so good. So the man went back to the rabbi and said in a questioning tone, "Ty Cobb, 367? That's it?" "Right," said the rabbi. "Ty Cobb, 367. He got a hit once out of every 3 times at bat. He didn't even bat 500, so what can you expect already?" "Ah," said the man, who thought he was a wretched failure because only half the time he did not succeed at what he must do. Theology is amazing, and holy books abound. My grandfather Sam called me up last Tuesday to ask me if I'd take him to a football game. Grandfather likes small-town high school football, and even better, the 8-man ball played by crossroads teams. Grandfather is a fan of amateurs and small scale. Some people are concerned about how it is that good things happen to bad people, and there are those who are concerned about how bad things happen to good people, but my grandfather is interested in those times when miracles happen to ordinary people. Here again, he likes small scale. When a nothing team full of nothing kids from a nothing town rises up with nothing to lose against some upmarket suburban outfit with new uniforms and starts chunking Hail Mary bombs from their own goal line, and their scrawny freshman tight end catches 3 in a row to win the game, well, it does your heart good, and my grandfather likes that a lot. Murphy's Law does not always hold, says Grandfather Sam. Every once in a while, the fundamental laws of the universe seem to be momentarily suspended, and not only does everything go right, nothing seems to be able to keep it from going right. It's not always something as dramatic as the long bomb or the Holy Jesus slam dunk that wins ball games. Ever drop a glass in the sink when you're washing dishes and have it bounce 9 times and not even chip? Ever come out after work to find your lights have been on all day and your battery's dead, but you're parked on a hill and you let your old hoopy roll and it fires the first time you pop the clutch and off you roar with a high heart? Ever pull out a drawer in your desk that has a 10-year accumulation of junk in it, pull it too far and too fast, and just as it's about to vomit its contents all over the room, you get a knee under it and stagger back, hopping on one foot, doing a balancing act like the great zucchini, but you don't lose it? Or a near miss at an intersection, or the glass of knocked over milk that waltzes across the table but doesn't spill, or the deposit that beat your rubber check to the bank because there was a holiday you forgot about, or the lump in your breast that turned out to be benign, the heart attack that just turned out to be gas, picking the right lane for once in a traffic jam, opening the door of your car with a coat hanger through the wing window on the first try, and on and on and on. When small miracles occur for ordinary people, day by ordinary day, when not only did the worst not happen, but maybe nothing much happened at all, or some little piece fell neatly into place. The grace of what might have been but wasn't, and it was good to get off scot-free for once. The ecstasy of what could never happen but did, and it was grand to have beat the odds against for a change. Or the bliss of just what was for a day, when nothing special took place. Life just worked. My grandfather says he blesses God each day when he takes himself off to bed having eaten and not been eaten once again. Or in the words of his prayer, "Now I lay me down to sleep, in the peace of amateurs, for whom so many blessings flow. I thank you, God, for what went right. Amen." Now let me tell you about Larry Walters, my hero. Walters is a truck driver, 33 years old. He is sitting in his lawn chair in his backyard wishing he could fly. For as long as he could remember, he wanted to go up, to be able to just rise right up in the air and see for a long way. But the time and the money and the education and the opportunity to be a pilot were not his. And hang gliding was too dangerous, and any good place for gliding was too far away anyhow, so he spent a lot of summer afternoons sitting in his backyard in his ordinary old aluminum lawn chair, the kind with the webbing and the rivets, just like the one you've got in your backyard. Now the next chapter in this story is carried by the newspapers and the television, for there's old Larry Walters up in the air over Los Angeles, flying at last, really getting up there, still sitting in his aluminum lawn chair, but it's hooked onto 45 helium-filled surplus weather balloons. Larry has a parachute on, a CB radio in his lap, a six-pack of beer, some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and a BB gun to pop some of the balloons to come down. And instead of just being a couple of 100 feet over his own neighborhood, he's shot up 11,000 feet, right through the approach corridor to the LA International Airport. Walters is a wonderfully taciturn man. When asked by the press why he did it, he said, "You can't just sit there forever." When asked if he was scared, he answered, "Wonderfully so." When asked if he would do it again, he said, "Nope." And asked if he was glad that he did it, he grinned from ear to ear and said, "Oh, yes." The human race sits in its chair. On the one hand is the message that says, "There's nothing left to do." And the Larry Walterses of the earth are busy tying balloons to their chairs, directed by dreams and imagination to do their thing. The human race sits in its chair. On the one hand is the message that the human situation is hopeless, and the Larry Walterses of the earth soar upward knowing anything is possible, and sending back the message from 11,000 feet, "I done it! I really done it! I'm flying!" It's the spirit here that counts. The time may be long, the vehicle may be strange or unexpected, but if the dream is held close to the heart, and imagination is applied to what there is close at hand, everything is still possible. But wait! Some cynic from the edge of the crowd insists that human beings still can't really fly, not like birds anyway. True, but somewhere in some little garage, Some maniac with a gleam in his eye is scarfing vitamins and mineral supplements and practicing flapping his arms faster and faster and faster, and who knows?